This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform helping you succeed online.
Alright, so today I've got the Leica Lights phone powered by Xiaomi, which is the global edition of the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, and I'm putting it up against the latest Ultra phone from Samsung, which is the Galaxy S26 Ultra. So we're going to see how these Ultra camera systems compare. And the Xiaomi has the larger camera hardware across the board, including the selfie camera, with the exception of the slightly smaller ultra-wide camera. And the Xiaomi is going with a 1-inch type main sensor compared to the S26 Ultra's 1/1.31-inch main sensor. And Xiaomi's gone with a single telephoto camera approach, replacing dual telephoto sensors. And it's a large sensor at 1/1.4 inches, which is pretty much as large as a lot of other phones' main cameras. And this gives you a continuous optical zoom range between 75 and 100 millimeters, while Samsung has stuck with the dual telephoto approach at 3 and 5x, and both those sensors are considerably smaller than the single telephoto on the Xiaomi. Now, Xiaomi's telephoto camera has traditionally been a telemacro camera, meaning you can get close to subjects and take some really nice macro shots. And although this sensor can't get quite as close as previous generations, I still found myself being able to get pretty close to subjects, or at least a lot closer to subjects than I thought I would be able to, and definitely closer than even the 5x telephoto camera on the S26 Ultra, which is the larger and better sensor of the two telephoto cameras on the Samsung. And Xiaomi's also upgraded their selfie camera to 50 megapixels and a larger selfie camera sensor than what is on the Samsung. And Xiaomi's also improved their selfie camera image processing, at least from what I've seen on other phones in this range, like the Xiaomi 17 standard version. And of course, being Ultra phones, they have pro-level camera hardware and software, meaning they also support log video, which is what you're seeing right here. And it's probably been color graded or color corrected by the time you're seeing it. But the S26 Ultra supports Samsung's APV codec, which has been co-developed with Qualcomm, which you're saying competes with Apple's ProRes codec, giving you higher quality video at smaller file sizes. And the Xiaomi 17 Ultra supposedly supports APV, but I don't think it's in the default camera app. I don't see it as an available codec, but I believe you can use a third-party app like Blackmagic or something to access that. I'll take a look more into that. I just got the phone, so if you know more about it, leave me a comment. But of course, color grading and using things like log video allows you to customize the video output and get the exact kind of colors that you're looking for in the video that you're shooting. So let me know what you think about the quality here. And so I adjusted the camera angle to get more depth behind me to show you this portrait video mode, or this background blur type of effect. On the Samsung, it's just called portrait video mode and has a fully adjustable blur to be as more or less as you want. On the Xiaomi, it uses two camera modes to produce this effect for whatever reason. On the rear cameras, right now it's called movie mode, and I don't see a setting to adjust the background blur. But on the front-facing camera, you can just use the standard video mode and turn on the bokeh effect to produce this, where it is adjustable. But those are all the camera specs, and so all that really matters at the end of the day is how they perform. What do the photos and videos actually look like? So like I always do, I'm going to show you a bunch of photos and videos in both good and low light conditions to help you decide which of these two camera systems are the best for your smartphone camera needs. So go ahead and take a look at all the photos and videos, and let me know what you think. However, just a quick break from the video to remind you that having a personal or business website is a great way to organize and centralize your online content and activity, from news posts to blog posts to social media activity to any content that you produce like photos or videos. So if that sounds good to you, then today's sponsor, Squarespace, definitely has you covered. In addition to offering templates for every type of website to help you quickly get started, Squarespace offers various ways to quickly set up various income streams, from selling your photos or artwork on various products your audience would appreciate, to providing a quick way for your supporters to donate and help fund your work, or selecting from pre-built templates to easily create a members-only area on your website to offer your supporters exclusive content and new ways to connect with you. And when you're ready to publish your website, go to squarespace.com/grantlikestech for 10% off your first website or domain. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace, for sponsoring today's video, which helps me bring you more content like this. So let's go ahead and get back to the video.
Alright, so here's a video test of the rear cameras of the Xiaomi 17 Ultra or the Lights phone up against the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra. And as you can see, they both are actively recording from the rear facing cameras. And we are starting out with the ultra wide angle cameras on each at 4K 60 frames per second. So I'm just going to pan around here so you get a side-by-side view of how these ultra wide angle cameras here look and perform. And I really like the Air again because it's got a lot of your primary colors, the reds, greens, and blues. And some good shadows in trees. You can see how it handles the shadows. And you can see the exposure adjust there on the rails and then back up. Again, re-exposed for the light. Overall, pretty good. Nothing too much of a swing there. And we go to the 1x main sensor on the Xiaomi. So that's a 1-inch type main sensor. And then we've got the 1x main sensor here on the Galaxy S26 Ultra. And so I'll do the same thing. I'll just pan around here in the same spot to give you a side-by-side view of how these main cameras look and perform and compare next to each other. And one more time, we'll pan back up to see how it adjusts for exposure. And again, pretty even, no major swings. And we'll pan out to the right and we'll test zoom out on that cell tower. So the Xiaomi has the 3.2x to 4.3x telephoto sensor, optical zoom range there. So 3.2x there on the Xiaomi. And the Samsung has the dual telephoto sensors. So one with 3x here and the other primary one, larger sensor at 5x right there. And the Xiaomi again can move into all the way up to a 4.3x optical zoom on that same telephoto sensor, which is what you see right now. And the Xiaomi can go all the way into a 30x zoom there. And the Samsung will go all the way into a 25x zoom. So both looks pretty steady and pretty clear actually for that long of a focal length. And we'll go ahead and pan or move them back out on the Samsung and on the Xiaomi. And we'll test autofocus on the post. So first with the Xiaomi with its 1-inch type sensor. So it's going to have a deep natural background bokeh effect that you see there. Really nice because of that large sensor. And now with the Samsung. So it's pretty snappy autofocus and not as large of a sensor, so not quite as much of that natural background bokeh effect, but still looks pretty nice. And so let's go ahead and walk down the stairs to show you what the stabilization looks like here side by side as I now walk through this pathway and how everything looks through the shadows and back into the lights. And I'll just jog to try to stress out the stabilization as well. So there you go, an outdoor video test of the Xiaomi 17 Ultra / Lights phone up against the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra. Alright, so we're back with the rear cameras, this time with log video, still at 4K 60 frames per second. So I'm just going to pan around here to give you a side-by-side view of how this log video looks. And there's a lot of background noise here in the park right now. There's some workers doing their jobs, and so I may or may not use the audio footage here, but it also might be a good chance to demonstrate the background noise reduction. But once you start recording in log, you got to pick a lens, so you can't switch between them while actively recording here in log video. So this is the main camera on each, and I can move in from here 1x to 3x here on the, or 6x on the Xiaomi. And we can move all the way up into 10x here on the Samsung. So we'll back both of them out to 1x. And then I'll just go ahead and walk down the stairs again, just to give you a side-by-side view of what this looks like. And you can compare it to the auto footage that you just saw versus this color graded or color corrected footage that you're seeing here in log. So let me just think about the log video footage here on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra and Galaxy S26 Ultra. Alright, so we're back with the rear cameras, this time with portrait video on the S26 Ultra. And this is movie mode on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. On the front-facing camera, there's an option to just turn on the portrait video effect or background bokeh in the standard video mode. But on the rear cameras, you're going to have to turn to movie mode to get rear-facing kind of portrait background blur effect here on the Xiaomi for whatever reason. And so, again, you should be seeing this background blur effect on both. And you can adjust that amount of blur on each, so you can have more or less blur as you want. And right now the sun is shining directly on me. It's a very intense sunlight, so it's very bright, which is good for this effect because it does require a good amount of light. But I'll just start panning around so you can see how this effect changes and how the picture quality changes as the lighting conditions change a bit here with the sun more directly behind me. And as I'll keep panning around here, it's going to be more off my back right, and at this point it's going to be right more directly on me again. And so we'll just pan back to where we started. And I'll just start walking so I can show you the stabilization side by side as well as how this effect holds up with some movement. So let me know what you think about portrait video on the S26 Ultra and movie mode on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. Alright, so here's a video test of the front-facing cameras on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra and Galaxy S26 Ultra. This is being shot at 4K 60 frames per second, and it's a fairly windy afternoon, so it's a good test for the microphones as well to see how well they're able to reject that background and wind noise. And so right now the sun is shining more directly on me, so this is probably the best possible video quality you're going to see here in some pretty intense sunlight. So I'll just start panning around so you can see what this looks like here as the lighting conditions change and how the cameras handle and adjust the exposure for that. And so it's now more directly behind me than anything, and I'll keep panning around this way so it's kind of more off of my right, and we'll keep going around, and this is more directly towards me and on me, and we'll end up where we were. And I'll just start walking so we can test the stabilization and show you what that looks like here side by side. So let me just think about the front facing video quality here on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra and Galaxy S26 Ultra. Alright, so we're back with the front-facing cameras, this time with portrait video on both, so you should be seeing this artificial background blur right now. And the blur is fully adjustable on each. The aperture on the Xiaomi is set to f/2.8, and the Galaxy uses more of a number scale, so it's, I believe, 5/7 right now, so it's adjustable to have more or less blur as you want. And so again, I'm in the same spot, sun is shining more directly on me, so this is the best chance for this effect to look its best because it does require a good amount of even sunlight as much as possible. But I'll just start panning around again so you can see what this looks like here as the lighting condition changes and how the effect holds up with some of those changes. And so now it's more kind of behind me at this moment. You can see the exposure adjust. And now it's kind of more off of my back right. And if I keep panning around, it'll be more back right on me again. And I'll just start walking again so you can see the stabilization and how this background effect holds up with some movement. So let me know what you think about the front-facing portrait video quality here on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra and Galaxy S26 Ultra.
Everyone, here's a low light video test of the rear cameras of the Xiaomi 17 Ultra and Galaxy S26 Ultra. This is the ultra wide angle cameras to start out on each at 4K 60 frames per second. Again, these are the ultra wide angle cameras. So I'm just going to pan around here to give you a side-by-side view of what these ultra wide angle cameras look like and how they compare. And it looks pretty dark in the viewfinder, and that's because these sensors are quite small, and it's a little smaller actually on the Xiaomi. That's the one sensor that's actually smaller than the other sensors on the S26 Ultra. But when I go into the main camera on the Xiaomi, the full 1-inch type sensor, you can see it really brightens up. Same thing on the Galaxy S26 Ultra, not quite as large of a sensor on the main camera on the S26 Ultra as the 1-inch type sensor on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, but you can see they're both much brighter than the ultra wide angle cameras, much larger sensors, letting more light here. So here's a side-by-side view of the main cameras. And let's go ahead and test the telephoto cameras. The Xiaomi has the single telephoto camera that has optical zoom between 3.2x and 4.3x. So there is your 3.2x on the Xiaomi. And then you've got a 3x telephoto here on the Samsung, so much darker, much smaller telephoto sensor than the Xiaomi. And here is the 5x telephoto sensor on the S26 Ultra. And we can move all the way out to the 4.3x optical zoom on the telephoto camera on the Xiaomi. And the Xiaomi goes all the way up to a 30x zoom. And the S26 Ultra goes up to a 25x zoom. You can see they're fairly dark, and you see what it looks like here as far as the quality and how they kind of try to clean up things, or maybe not as much in the dark. And we'll pull back out to the main cameras on each and pan around, and we'll start walking so we can test the stabilization and see what that looks like side by side, as well as to move over to a much darker area. Obviously there's some light back there, and through this pathway it's much darker. You just got some light coming off of the building on my left, and we'll walk around the corner here and where it's completely dark, and we'll pull up here. You can see it's dark here, the lights on the pathway are not lit up, and I'll pan this way where you get some light down this corridor here and some cast off from the building as well, which I'll pan up into. See some of the building lights and up into the night sky. There is light pollution out here, so there might be some noise that's introduced. And we'll pan back around, and you can see the moon up that way, right over there. And actually, let's go ahead, 5x telephoto on the Samsung, max 4.3x telephoto zoom optical on the Xiaomi. We'll pull back on each. So there you go, quick nighttime low light video test on the rear cameras of the Xiaomi 17 Ultra or Lights phone and the Galaxy S26 Ultra. Everyone, I'm back with the rear camera, this time at 4K 30 frames per second. So you notice it's much brighter now on the S26 Ultra at 30 frames per second, which is typical of most camera systems. 30 frames per second will be brighter, especially in low light, than 60 frames per second. But the Xiaomi is looking relatively about the same, at least to the viewfinder, but much brighter in the viewfinder on the S26 Ultra. So I'm just going to do the same thing so you can kind of see what it looks like here now at 30 frames per second on the S26 Ultra and how that compares to the Xiaomi, which is looking relatively the same as it was at 60 frames per second. And here's the darker area out this way. And I'll just kind of reverse course so you can kind of see what it was like in that other area as well, as I walk back to where we started the 60 frames per second test from. You can see the lights out that way and how everything is looking a lot brighter, especially on the Samsung. And we'll actually move out to the ultra wide angle cameras because you'll see that it might look a little bit brighter, probably on both actually. So there you go on the Samsung and on the Xiaomi. Let's see if we can get there. Wrong way. There we go. So now these are the ultra wide angle cameras, and yeah, even on the Xiaomi, it's looking brighter at 30 frames per second. So there you go. If you're curious, in low light, use 30 frames. Get more usable footage. Maybe too bright. Some people like looking more like night, but this way at least you can kind of see things a little bit better. So main lens again, just to finish this out. quick test at 30 frames per second just so you can see the difference between that 60 frames per second footage you just saw. Hey everyone, so here's a low light video test of the front facing cameras of the Xiaomi 17 Ultra or Lights phone and the Galaxy S26 Ultra. This is being recorded at 4K 60 frames per second, and I am in my usual testing spot here with a bunch of bright lights behind me, so you can see what these look like in some fairly optimal low light conditions. And at least in the viewfinder on the Samsung, it's looking a little bit darker. The colors are looking more muted and off, but it's going to look different and brighter at 30 frames per second, which is what I would recommend if you're shooting in low light. But I'm just trying to use the highest frame rate to be consistent across the board here. And I'll show you some 30 frames per second footage a little bit later, just so you can compare the difference. But I'll just start walking so I can show you what the stabilization looks like side by side, as well as move over to an area with a little bit less light so you can see what that looks like. And again, not only is it darker on the Samsung, but the colors are looking pretty off. That could just be in the viewfinder, and it might be looking okay by what you're seeing right now on your screen. But I'll pan all the way around so you can see how these front-facing cameras handle the bunch of really bright streetlights behind me. And overall, looking pretty well. Nothing's being flared out, and it's handling those lights as well as they possibly probably could here. And I'll come back to this area where there's less light so you can see what this looks like here side by side. And it is a warmer color tone, a little bit dingy light, so that's to be expected. And still, in the viewfinder of the S26 Ultra, it's not just looking darker, but the colors are looking much grayer and pretty off here. And so I'll come back with some 30 frames per second footage so you can compare what it looks like and what I'm talking about here, as well as come back with a few thoughts about the comparison. Hey everyone, so we're back with the front-facing cameras, and this is at 4K 30 frames per second. And so in the viewfinder, everything's looking much brighter on the Samsung, even on the Xiaomi, looking a lot clearer on both. And so this is what I was talking about earlier. Shoot in low light, shoot at 30 frames per second. Here's the difference that I was talking about. And so I'll just move over back to this other area where there's less light so you can see what it looks like here with less light at 30 frames per second. And I'll just go ahead and talk through some of my thoughts on this camera comparison here. But as far as the overall camera comparison, for me, it's really going to come down to personal preference. I think they both handle the image processing differently. Obviously, Xiaomi is partnered with Leica, especially with this Lights phone. This is the Leica Lights phone, powered by Xiaomi is what it's called. And so of course you're going to get that Leica look. You're going to have a lot of Leica filters, and you're going to have a lot of Leica camera options here as far as the looks and how the image is processed in comparison to Samsung's approach to image processing. But of course, if you really want full control and you really care about what your photos and videos look like, then you'll probably just use the Pro mode on the Xiaomi and the Expert RAW mode on the Samsung as far as photography to shoot in RAW. And then you also have log video on both of these devices to shoot in log, so that you're able to just edit your photos and videos to get the look that you're really going for anyway, in which case it could be closer to a wash. But if you're just kind of pointing and shooting, or even trying to using some of the Pro modes and wanting to use more of the filters and relying somewhat on some of the image processing on both these phones, then it's definitely going to come down to your own personal preference. And I think if you're really into photography, you'll probably like the more natural look tones and some of the Leica options that the Xiaomi has to provide. And that's what I would personally prefer, and that's just as far as how the image processing goes. But as far as the actual camera capabilities, the camera sensors are larger across the board on the Xiaomi, except the ultra wide angle camera. That's where the S26 Ultra has a slightly larger sensor and probably the advantage as far as the camera sensors go. But all the other sensors, especially on the rear, the main sensor, the telephoto sensor, are going to be much larger and overall better hardware on the Xiaomi. And you can really tell, just look at the depth of field
on all the photos. It's going to be a much shallower depth of field or more of a background blur naturally on the Xiaomi versus the S26 Ultra. And so if you're into macro photography, I think you're really going to prefer the Xiaomi for that purpose. If you're into portrait shooting, you're probably going to prefer the Xiaomi for that purpose. And the telephoto sensor on the Xiaomi is pretty much as large as a lot of phones' main sensors. And they've got the optical zoom that can go between 3.2x and 4.3x. And so that's a nice feature. Instead of giving you two telephoto lenses, they give you one that can just do an optical range there. And also with that, it's kind of a telemacro sensor. People are saying that you can't focus as close to subjects on the Xiaomi's telephoto sensor this year as you could in previous generations. But I found that I could still get fairly close and still take macro style photos with that telephoto camera. Get just as close and even closer than the telephoto cameras on the S26 Ultra. Just take a look at the photos that I showed you with them. And so for me, overall, I would prefer to shoot with the Xiaomi. But the S26 Ultra still does fairly well, just like the S25 Ultra did. And so I think you can't really go wrong with either. It's just going to come down to a lot of preference and what you like to shoot and how you like to shoot it. So again, those are a bit of extended thoughts, I guess, on these two phones and what I've seen so far. I'll continue to test them. I'll do more camera comparisons. I might have some updated thoughts and maybe some of these opinions might change, but we'll see. And so just drop me a comment with what you personally saw and what you think. If you have experience with any of these phones, let me know what you think and what you personally prefer. Of course, if you have any general questions about either of these phones outside the cameras or even about the cameras, leave a comment as well. I'll try to answer what I can. And as always, thanks for watching.